6 signs the universe sends only to women entering their power. Carl Jung, if this video has found you, it's not an accident. The universe only delivers this message to women who are about to step into their most powerful phase of life. You may feel restless, misunderstood, or on the edge of something bigger. Carl Jung's depth psychology reveals why and what comes next will change how you see yourself forever. Part 1. The calling of the universe. When a woman enters a new threshold of power, Carl Jung often insisted that the events of our lives are not simply random happenings, but are deeply intertwined with the unconscious patterns of the psyche and the symbolic order of the universe. For women stepping into their most powerful phase, the universe begins to speak in ways that are subtle yet undeniable. This is not merely a poetic metaphor, but a psychological process grounded in what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that are too precise to be dismissed as chance. When a woman is about to cross into a new threshold of power, her life begins to fill with signals, dreams, encounters, challenges, and inner restlessness that indicate transformation is underway. These signals form what can be described as a calling, a moment where the universe seems to lean closer and whisper, "You are ready." To understand this threshold fully, we must first look at the Jungian idea of individuation, the process of becoming one's truest self. Jung saw individuation as the central task of human life, the integration of the conscious and the unconscious, the reconciling of shadow and light, the emergence of a complete authentic identity. For many women, entering their most powerful phase is not about external success, social recognition, or material achievement alone. It is about embodying a deeper wholeness, one that draws energy from the unconscious and reshapes how they move through the world. This threshold often comes after years of silent preparation, experiences of loss, love, betrayal, disappointment, or sudden awakenings that carve new space within the psyche. The calling of the universe is felt not as a rational plan, but as an intuitive knowing. Women often describe it as a deep pull towards something greater than themselves. It can feel unsettling, even disorienting, because it challenges the identity that has been built up through societal roles, family expectations, and cultural conditioning. A woman may suddenly feel alienated from old circles of friends, disinterested in old ambitions, or restless within routines that once defined her. This alienation is not a sign of regression, but of transition. Jung understood that such periods of estrangement mark the boundary between one psychic stage and another. The unconscious begins to demand recognition, and life circumstances shift to force that recognition into awareness. One of the clearest manifestations of this calling appears through synchronicities. Jung described synchronicity as the causal connection between inner states and outer events, when what happens in the world outside aligns uncannily with what is stirring in the psyche within. For a woman entering her most powerful phase, synchronicities multiply. She might think about someone she has not spoken to in years, only to receive their message within hours. She may dream of a particular symbol, a serpent, a rising sun, a door opening, and the next day encounter these images in unexpected ways. Each event on its own could be dismissed as chance, but their cumulative weight reveals a pattern. Jung saw synchronicity as a way the unconscious communicates through the fabric of reality itself. It is as if the universe conspires to highlight the psychological transformation taking place, urging the individual forward. This phase is often marked by an intensification of dreams. Dreams in Jungian analysis are not random noise, but messages from the unconscious, dramatizing the conflicts and potentials that lie beneath consciousness. Women on the threshold of power frequently report dreams of flying, of standing at the edge of vast landscapes, of encountering powerful feminine figures such as priestesses, queens, or goddesses. These dream images are not trivial. They are archetypal, carrying the weight of collective meaning. The psyche draws from universal patterns, the archetypes, to express what the conscious ego struggles to grasp. Such dreams are psychic rehearsals for the empowerment that is coming. They reveal hidden reservoirs of strength, creativity, and resilience, and they prepare the dreamer to claim them. A woman may also notice a heightened sensitivity to symbols in waking life. What once appeared as ordinary coincidence now feels charged with meaning. Numbers repeating on clocks, animals crossing her path, words overheard in passing conversations, all seem to echo her inner questions. This is not mere superstition, but an expansion of symbolic awareness. Jung argued that the psyche is symbolic by nature. It thrives not on literal explanations, but on metaphor and myth. For a woman entering her most powerful phase, her capacity to perceive symbolism sharpens, and with it her ability to derive guidance from the world. This symbolic consciousness is one of the hallmarks of individuation, for it allows the individual to live not in mere surface reality, but in a multi-layered dialogue with existence. The calling of the universe is not always gentle. Often it arrives in the form of disruption. Jung noted that transformation is rarely smooth. It usually demands the dissolution of old structures. For women, this may appear as the collapse of a relationship, the end of a career path, or an unexpected illness that forces a re-evaluation of priorities. To the unprepared ego, these disruptions feel like chaos, even betrayal. Yet from the perspective of depth psychology, they are the necessary breakdowns that precede breakthrough. The universe clears away what no longer serves so that the woman can step into her fullest potential. Without the shattering of old containers, new energy cannot flow. This principle echoes through myth and fairy tale. The heroine must leave home, confront danger, and pass through darkness before discovering her treasure. Why does this phase belong so distinctly to women? Jung recognized that the psyche of women often carries a special relationship with the unconscious. While men in his theory often contend with their inner feminine, the anima, women must contend with their inner masculine, the animus. But beyond this structural difference, Jung also emphasized the richness of feminine symbolic life, its intuitive depth and capacity for transformation. Women entering their most powerful phase embody a reconciliation of both. They draw upon the archetypal feminine qualities of nurturing intuition and receptivity, while also integrating the assertive, goal-directed aspects of the draw. Animus. The result is a balance that unleashes extraordinary influence. It is a psychological alchemy, the merging of opposites into a greater wholeness. This threshold is not confined to age or circumstance. Some women encounter it in their 20s, others in their 40s or 60s. What unites these experiences is the sense that an inner shift has made the old way of being intolerable. Jung referred to this as a confrontation with the self, the archetype of totality, the deepest center of the psyche that transcends the ego. When the self begins to assert itself, the ego resists, but the pressure cannot be ignored. Women feel a surge of energy that is both terrifying and exhilarating, pulling them toward new paths, new relationships, and new expressions of creativity. This is the self-demanding actualization, and the universe seems to rearrange itself to assist in this demand. The process is not purely individual, but also collective. Jung believed that the individuation of one person contributes to the healing of the collective unconscious. When a woman enters her most powerful phase, she is not only transforming herself, but also embodying patterns that resonate for other women, for her community, and for the culture at large. Her empowerment ripples outward. This explains why synchronicities often involve other people. The universe seems to position her to meet mentors, allies, or even adversaries who catalyze her growth. Each encounter is part of the orchestration of her threshold crossing. In this way, the calling of the universe is not only personal destiny but also collective necessity. Psychologically, this phase can be described as a movement from outer orientation to inner orientation. Earlier in life, many women are conditioned to measure worth by external standards, how they are seen by family, society, partners, or institutions. But when the universe calls them into their power, these external measures lose their hold. The focus turns inward. What is my truth? What is my authentic voice? What do I stand for beyond roles and expectations? Jung saw this inward turn as essential to individuation, for only by aligning with the inner compass can one live fully. For women, this alignment often results in greater self-confidence, sharper boundaries, and a refusal to tolerate relationships or environments that diminish their value. At the same time, this threshold often ignites creativity. Jung associated the unconscious with a wellspring of creative energy. As women access deeper layers of their psyche, they may feel compelled to paint, write, dance, build, or innovate in ways they never dared before. Creativity becomes not just an activity, but a necessity, an outlet for the surplus of psychic energy that arises during transformation. The universe, through synchronicities and symbols, encourages this expression, providing inspiration and opportunities. What might begin as a hobby evolves into a vocation, or what once felt like a hidden passion becomes the very path that defines her new phase. Another hallmark of this calling is the sharpening of intuition. Intuition in Jungian typology is a psychological function that perceives possibilities and patterns without reliance on logical sequences. Women entering their powerful phase often report a heightened sense of knowing and ability to sense when a situation is right or wrong, when someone is trustworthy or deceitful, when an opportunity is aligned with their path. This intuitive clarity is not mystical in the dismissive sense, but is a function of the unconscious aligning with consciousness. It is as if the psyche, having integrated more of its contents, can now operate with greater efficiency, offering guidance from deeper layers. The woman becomes more attuned to her own inner authority, less swayed by external opinions and more capable of charting her unique course. Yet this empowerment is accompanied by tests. Jung suggested that the unconscious does not reveal its treasures without demanding sacrifice. A woman may be confronted with choices that require letting go of comfort, security, or approval. She may feel torn between the safety of the known and the risk of the unknown. These tests are not arbitrary. They are symbolic thresholds. Crossing them signals to the psyche that she is willing to claim her new identity. The universe responds with further synchronicities, reinforcing her courage and amplifying her sense of alignment. Each act of bravery builds momentum, leading her deeper into her phase of power. It is important to note that this process is rarely linear. Women may cycle through periods of doubt, regression, or exhaustion before emerging stronger. Jung likened transformation to the alchemical process, the breaking down of matter before its refinement into gold. Psychologically, this means enduring confusion, despair, or a sense of being lost before clarity emerges. The universe's calling is not always a clear voice, but sometimes a silence that forces inner listening. In these moments, patience and trust become essential. The woman learns to live with uncertainty, to resist the urge for premature answers, and to allow the psyche to unfold in its own rhythm. From a Jungian standpoint, entering the most powerful phase is essentially about embodying the self. The self, unlike the ego, is not concerned with surface roles but with wholeness. It embraces contradiction, integrates shadow, and radiates authenticity. When a woman aligns with the self, her presence changes. People feel her energy before she speaks. Her choices carry weight beyond personal gain. Her creativity touches collective archetypes. This is why the universe sends her signs, because her transformation matters not only for her, but for the larger field of humanity. Her empowerment contributes to the collective balance of energies, especially in a world that has long suppressed the feminine principle. The universe's calling, then, is both invitation and initiation. It is an invitation to step beyond old identities, and it is an initiation into a role of deeper significance. The signs, synchronicities, and disruptions are not random, but purposeful, guiding the psyche toward greater integration. For women entering their most powerful phase, this calling is unmistakable. They may resist doubt or delay, but eventually the pull becomes too strong. The unconscious insists on recognition, and life aligns to demand it. Jung would say that at this moment, the woman is no longer living by chance, but by destiny. Part 2. Confronting the Shadow, the Hidden Power Within Pain. Carl Jung believed that no transformation could take place without a confrontation with the shadow. The shadow in his psychology represents all the aspects of ourselves that we deny, repress, or remain unconscious of. It includes impulses, desires, fears, and memories that do not fit the ego's self-image. While the ego seeks to preserve an idealized sense of who we are, the shadow contains the truth of who we also are. For women entering their most powerful phase, this confrontation is inevitable. The universe, through synchronicities, crises, or deep inner restlessness, brings the shadow to the surface, demanding to be seen. Pain, betrayal, loneliness, and loss often become the vehicles through which this encounter occurs. What feels like destruction is, in Jung's view, the necessary dismantling of illusions so that the authentic self can emerge. Women who step into their deepest power frequently report having endured a period of profound suffering before their transformation. This suffering might come in the form of a relationship that collapses, a betrayal by someone deeply trusted, or an experience of rejection that wounds the soul. At first glance, such experiences seem cruel and meaningless. Yet from a Jungian perspective, they are the psyche's way of forcing consciousness to expand. Pain strips away the comfort of illusions, compelling a woman to face truths she might otherwise avoid. It is in this space of raw vulnerability that the shadow emerges, no longer hidden by the distractions of ordinary life. She begins to see not only the betrayals of others, but the ways she has betrayed herself by settling, by silencing her voice, by living inauthentically. This recognition is devastating but also liberating, for it opens the doorway to reclaiming the power that was lost. Jung often emphasized that the shadow is not purely negative. While it holds destructive tendencies, it also contains untapped creativity, passion, and strength. The reason the shadow feels dangerous is because it carries energy that the ego cannot easily control. For a woman entering her most powerful phase, integrating the shadow means reclaiming parts of herself that were exiled in childhood, adolescence, or early adulthood. Perhaps she was taught that anger is unfeminine, so she repressed her assertiveness. Perhaps she was told that ambition is unattractive, so she buried her drive. Perhaps she internalized shame about her body, her sexuality, or her desires, so she split off from her vitality. Each repression becomes part of the shadow. But when pain brings these issues to the surface, she has the chance to integrate them, turning wounds into sources of strength. Anger becomes boundaries. Ambition becomes purpose. Desire becomes creativity. The process of confronting the shadow is rarely linear. Women may resist it at first, clinging to the ego's illusions. They may project their shadow onto others, seeing in their friends, partners, or rivals the very qualities they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. Jung explained that projection is the most common way the shadow operates. We disown our traits by locating them in others, blaming them for what we cannot accept within. For example, a woman may condemn another for being too assertive while secretly yearning to claim her own assertiveness. Or she may resent another's freedom while suppressing her own desire for independence. These projections create conflict but also serve as mirrors, offering opportunities for self-recognition. When a woman begins to realize that what she despises or envies in others is also alive within her, she takes the first step toward integration. Pain plays a crucial role in breaking through denial. Betrayal, for instance, often forces a woman to confront the shadow of trust and naivete. She must face her tendency to ignore red flags, her fear of being alone, or her compulsion to please at the expense of self-respect. Loneliness, too, becomes a shadow teacher. In solitude, the distractions fall away, and she must face the inner emptiness that comes from avoiding her true self. Loss, whether of a relationship, a career, or a dream, confronts her with the shadow of impermanence and mortality. Each of these painful experiences, though excruciating, contains the seed of transformation. The shadow does not emerge to punish, but to awaken. It carries the very energy that, once integrated, allows a woman to embody her most powerful phase. Jung compared the integration of the shadow to alchemy, the ancient practice of turning base metals into gold. In psychological alchemy, The base metals are the raw, unwanted aspects of the self, the rage, the fear, the envy, the shame. The gold is the wisdom, creativity, and strength that emerge when these aspects are acknowledged and transformed. Women who courageously face their shadows often describe the process as a descent into darkness, followed by a rising into light. They confront the ugliest parts of themselves, the bitterness, the jealousy, the despair, only to discover that these very qualities, when embraced, hold the key to their wholeness. The rage reveals what they truly value. The jealousy points to what they desire. The despair forces them to redefine meaning. In this way, the shadow becomes not an enemy but a guide. Culturally, women have long been pressured to embody light while denying shadow. They are expected to be nurturing, agreeable, and selfless, often at the cost of authenticity. This cultural conditioning makes the shadow confrontation even more necessary, for it calls women to reclaim what society has stolen. When a woman allows herself to feel anger, she breaks free from the myth of endless patience. When she acknowledges her ambition, she defies the narrative that her worth lies only in service to others. When she embraces her sexuality, she challenges the repression that has kept female desire taboo. Each act of shadow integration is both personal healing and cultural rebellion. The universe in this sense is not merely calling her into individual power, but into collective transformation. Dreams during this phase often dramatize the shadow. A woman may dream of being chased by a dark figure, attacked by wild animals, or descending into a cave. These dream images symbolize the unconscious contents pressing for recognition. Jung encouraged paying close attention to such dreams, for they reveal what the conscious mind resists. To run from the dark figure in a dream is to run from one's own repressed energy. To descend into the cave is to enter the womb of transformation, the place where shadow and self can be reconciled. Women who engage with their dreams through journaling, analysis, or creative expression gain direct insight into the shadow's messages. What once seemed terrifying becomes a source of guidance. Synchronicities also reflect shadow dynamics. A woman confronting her shadow may repeatedly encounter symbols of death endings or transformation in her waking life. She may stumble upon books, films, or conversations that mirror her inner struggles. These external reflections signal that the unconscious is orchestrating experiences to accelerate her growth. What feels like coincidence is, in Jung's terms, the causal connection between psyche and world. The universe seems to say, "Look here. Face this. It matters." By heeding these signals, a woman can navigate the shadow with greater awareness, trusting that even the most painful events are part of a larger design. One of the most challenging aspects of shadow work is the encounter with rage. For many women, rage has been suppressed for years, buried under politeness, fear of rejection, or the need to maintain harmony. When it surfaces, it can feel explosive, even frightening. Yet Jung would argue that rage is not to be feared but understood. Rage arises when boundaries are violated, when injustice has been endured, or when authenticity has been stifled. It is the psyche's way of demanding change. When acknowledged and channeled, rage becomes a source of fierce clarity. It empowers women to say no, to protect their dignity, and to pursue justice. Rather than destroying it, creates the conditions for respect and equality. In this way, what once felt like a shameful shadow becomes a sacred fire. Another shadow element that often emerges is envy. Women are socialized to suppress envy, labeling it as petty or unkind. Yet, envy, when explored, reveals desire. If a woman envies another's freedom, it may be because she longs to liberate herself. If she envies another's success, it may point to her own buried ambitions. By owning envy rather than denying it, she uncovers her hidden yearnings. Jung emphasized that every emotion carries information, and to dismiss envy is to dismiss the map that points toward one's destiny. Women who embrace envy as a teacher instead of a curse discover paths they had long ignored. The shadow once again becomes an ally. Shame is perhaps the deepest shadow of all. Shame convinces women that they are unworthy, unlovable, or defective. It thrives in secrecy, growing stronger the more it is hidden. To confront shame is to step into unbearable vulnerability, yet it is in this confrontation that healing begins. Jung believed that bringing unconscious contents into consciousness diminishes their power. When women speak their shame, share their stories, and reveal their hidden wounds, they break the spell of isolation. What once seemed like proof of unworthiness becomes a bridge to authenticity and connection. The universe, by orchestrating experiences of exposure, often forces shame into the light. A relationship might end revealing long-buried insecurities. A failure might strip away perfectionism. Though humiliating, these events shatter illusions and open the path to genuine self-acceptance. The shadow confrontation is not only psychological but also spiritual. Jung argued that the psyche has a religious function. It seeks meaning, connection, and wholeness. When women face their shadows, they often describe the process in spiritual terms. They feel as if they are dying and being reborn. They speak of encountering a larger force, an intelligence that seems to guide the transformation. This is the self at work, the archetype of totality that Jung saw as the organizing principle of the psyche. The self uses pain, dreams, and synchronicities to lead the ego toward integration. For women, this often feels like being initiated into a deeper feminine wisdom, one that transcends personal identity and taps into the collective. Their suffering becomes sacred not because it is romanticized, but because it serves a profound purpose. This sacredness is evident in myths and archetypes across cultures. The descent of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess, into the underworld mirrors the shadow journey. Stripped of her power and dignity, Inanna confronts death before rising renewed. Persephone's abduction into Hades echoes the same theme, a descent into darkness that awakens feminine power. These myths endure because they reflect psychological realities. Women entering their most powerful phase reenact these archetypal patterns. Their betrayals, losses, and confrontations are not random misfortunes, but chapters in an ancient story of descent and ascent. By aligning with these archetypes, women can find meaning in their pain, recognizing that they are not alone but part of a universal process. The integration of the shadow transforms relationships as well. A woman who has faced her darkness no longer tolerates superficial connections. She demands authenticity, for she has learned the cost of denial. She recognizes manipulation, projection, and dishonesty with sharp clarity. At the same time, she extends compassion, for she knows firsthand the struggle of carrying hidden wounds. Her relationships deepen, becoming less about dependency and more about mutual growth. This shift often leads to the end of some relationships, for not everyone is ready to meet authenticity with authenticity. But those who remain, or who enter anew, reflect the woman's new wholeness. The universe clears away the false to make room for the real. Importantly, shadow work cultivates humility. Empowerment does not mean arrogance, it means integration. A woman who has embraced her shadow no longer clings to perfection. She knows she is flawed, and this knowledge grounds her power. Her strength is not brittle but resilient, for it is rooted in truth rather than illusion. She becomes less defensive, less reactive, more capable of listening. Paradoxically, by owning her darkness, she radiates more light. This is the paradox Jung pointed to again and again. Wholeness is not about purity, but about integration. The woman's power lies not in being above the shadow, but in carrying it consciously. The universe supports this process through relentless reminders. Until the shadow is faced, it repeats. Patterns recur, betrayal after betrayal, failure after failure, emptiness after emptiness, until the lesson is integrated. Once integration begins, the repetition eases and new opportunities arise. This is why many women, after years of struggle, suddenly experience a surge of success, creativity, and alignment. The universe is no longer mirroring avoidance, but celebrating embodiment. The shadow, once resisted, becomes a source of magnetism. The woman's energy shifts, and she begins to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with her wholeness. The hidden power within pain is ultimately the liberation of energy. What was once bound in repression, secrecy, and denial becomes available for life. Jung wrote that neurosis is often the result of repressed life force, and healing occurs when that force is reclaimed. For women, the shadow confrontation frees vitality that can be directed toward purpose, love, and creativity. The very experiences that once seemed to break them become the foundation of their power. Pain does not vanish, but it is transfigured. It becomes wisdom, empathy, and courage. The woman who has faced her shadow walks differently. Her presence carries depth. Her words carry authority. Her life carries meaning. Part 3: Feminine Energy and the Archetype of the Goddess. Carl Jung emphasized that the psyche is structured by archetypes, primordial patterns that shape the way we perceive, feel, and act. Among these archetypes, none is more crucial for women stepping into their most powerful phase than the archetype of the goddess. This is not a literal deity, but a symbolic constellation of feminine energy that expresses itself through myth, culture, dreams, and personal experience. The goddess represents not just fertility or beauty, as conventional stereotypes might suggest, but the full spectrum of feminine power, creativity, wisdom, intuition, protection, destruction, and renewal. When a woman enters her most powerful phase, she awakens to these archetypal energies, often unconsciously at first, and begins to embody them in her life. The archetype of the goddess appears in countless forms across cultures. In Greek mythology, we see Hera, Athena, Artemis, Demeter, and Aphrodite, each embodying distinct dimensions of feminine power. In Hindu tradition, there are Durga, Kali, Saraswati, and Lakshmi. In ancient Egypt, Isis and Hathor symbolize feminine wisdom and creative force. Jung argued that these recurring images are not coincidences, but expressions of the collective unconscious shared psychological structures that manifest universally. For a woman entering her most powerful phase, these archetypal patterns become activated within her psyche. She may dream of powerful feminine figures, feel drawn to myths or stories of goddesses, or begin to express traits that reflect archetypal energies she never previously recognized in herself. This awakening can be both exhilarating and disorienting. Jung taught that archetypes are numinous. They carry a charge of sacred energy that overwhelms the ego. When the goddess archetype rises within, a woman feels a surge of vitality, creativity, and authority. She may suddenly find herself speaking with a confidence that surprises even her, or she may be compelled to create art, write, dance, or lead in ways she once hesitated to. At the same time, she may feel overwhelmed by the intensity of these energies. Archetypes are larger than life, and without consciousness they can possess the ego, leading to imbalance. This is why Jung stressed the importance of integrating archetypal energies rather than being swallowed by them. For women, the task is to embody the goddess archetype consciously, to allow its power to flow through them while remaining grounded in their individuality. One of the most striking aspects of the goddess archetype is its multiplicity. Unlike the singular, often monolithic image of masculine power, feminine archetypes span a wide range of expressions. The goddess is not just the mother or the lover. She is also the warrior, the destroyer, the wise woman, the healer, and the muse. For a woman entering her most powerful phase, this means she is not confined to one role. She may embody nurturance in one season, fierce independence in another, and visionary wisdom in yet another. This fluidity is the essence of feminine energy. It adapts, transforms, and encompasses contradictions. Jung observed that wholeness requires the integration of opposites, and the goddess archetype exemplifies this truth. She is both gentle and fierce, both life-giving and death-dealing, both ordered and chaotic. To awaken this archetype is to embrace complexity, to move beyond the simplistic roles society imposes and claim the fullness of being. Dreams often reveal the emergence of the goddess archetype. A woman may dream of standing before a radiant queen, of being guided by a wise old woman, or of encountering a fearsome yet protective female figure. These dreams are not fantasies but messages from the unconscious signaling that the archetype is activating. They may also carry warnings. If the woman resists her power, the goddess may appear as threatening or destructive, a shadow form demanding recognition. Jung noted that when archetypes are repressed, they return in distorted ways. For women, denying their archetypal power often leads to depression, anxiety, or destructive relationships. Embracing the archetype, however, brings vitality and purpose. The archetype of the goddess is not only personal, but also collective. Women embodying this energy often find themselves influencing others without intending to. Their presence alone inspires change, healing, or confrontation. This is because archetypes are contagious. They resonate in the collective unconscious. When a woman embodies the goddess consciously, those around her feel it. They may project onto her admiration, fear, envy, or devotion. Some may be drawn to her magnetically, while others may feel threatened. Jung warned that archetypal projection is powerful and must be navigated with awareness. Women in their most powerful phase must learn to distinguish between what is genuinely theirs and what others project onto them. This discernment protects them from being consumed by collective expectations and allows them to channel archetypal energy with integrity. Feminine energy in Jungian terms is not limited to gender. It represents qualities of intuition, receptivity, creativity, and connection to the unconscious. In patriarchal societies, these qualities are often devalued, leading women to suppress them and men to disown them. But when a woman enters her most powerful phase, she reclaims these energies unapologetically. She trusts her intuition, even when logic cannot explain it. She creates without waiting for permission. She honors her cycles, her emotions, and her sensitivity as sources of strength rather than weakness. This reclamation is revolutionary, for it challenges cultural conditioning and restores balance to the psyche. Jung insisted that individuation requires integrating both masculine and feminine energies regardless of gender. For women, stepping into their power often means reclaiming the feminine first, then balancing it with the animus, the inner masculine. The goddess archetype also includes the aspect of destruction. Figures like Kali in Hindu mythology embody the terrifying face of the feminine, the force that destroys illusions, egos, and structures that no longer serve. For a woman, this energy may emerge as the courage to end toxic relationships, leave oppressive environments, or dismantle outdated identities. It can feel ruthless, even frightening, but it is necessary for rebirth. Jung often drew parallels between psychological transformation and mythic descent. To rise into wholeness, one must first pass through death. The goddess as destroyer ensures that women do not cling to what hinders their growth. By embodying this aspect, a woman learns that saying no is as sacred as saying yes, that endings are as vital as beginnings. Alongside destruction comes creation. The goddess archetype is deeply linked to fertility, not only in the biological sense, but in the creative and spiritual sense. Women in their most powerful phase often experience an outpouring of creativity, new projects, businesses, art, or community endeavors. They give birth not only to children, but to ideas, movements, and transformations. This creativity is not forced, but flows naturally when the archetype is activated. Jung observed that when unconscious energy is integrated, it manifests as creative expression. For women, embodying the goddess often means becoming channels for innovation and inspiration. Their creativity carries archetypal weight, resonating beyond the personal to touch the collective. Another key element of the goddess archetype is wisdom. Figures like Athena, Saraswati, or Sophia represent the feminine principle of knowledge and insight. For women entering their powerful phase, this wisdom often manifests as a sharpened ability to see patterns, discern truth, and guide others. It is not merely intellectual knowledge, but a deep knowing that comes from lived experience and connection to the unconscious. This wisdom is often intuitive, emerging in moments of silence, meditation, or dream. Jung believed that the unconscious communicates through symbols, and women attuned to the goddess archetype become fluent in this symbolic language. They read the signs of the universe, trust their inner guidance, and offer counsel that feels timeless. The archetype also contains the energy of protection. Goddesses like Durga or Artemis symbolize the fierce protector who defends what is sacred. Women embodying this energy become guardians of their own boundaries and of those they love. They stand up against injustice, shield the vulnerable, and refuse to tolerate exploitation. This protective energy often emerges after a period of suffering when a woman realizes the cost of silence or compliance. Having confronted her own shadow, she becomes a defender not only of herself but of others. The universe often positions such women as leaders, mentors, or advocates for their protective energy as needed in the collective. Jung would see this as the individuation process extending beyond the personal, serving the community and even humanity as a whole. It is important to emphasize that embodying the goddess archetype does not mean perfection or constant strength. Archetypes are dynamic, and their energies ebb and flow. A woman may feel deeply creative one month and fiercely protective the next. She may embody nurturing in one relationship and independence in another. The power lies in embracing this fluidity without shame or apology. Society often pressures women to fit into narrow roles: mother-lover, professional caregiver, but the goddess archetype defies these limitations. It allows women to be many things at once, to embody contradiction, and to express power in diverse forms. Jung's psychology affirms that wholeness is not about consistency but about integration. To live as the goddess archetype is to accept the fullness of being with all its paradoxes. The activation of the goddess archetype also impacts men and the larger culture. When women embody archetypal feminine energy, they challenge patriarchal structures that have devalued the feminine for centuries. Their presence disrupts systems built on domination, exploitation, and control. They bring balance, insisting on intuition alongside logic, cooperation alongside competition, empathy alongside power. This disruption is not always welcomed. It can provoke resistance, fear, or backlash. Yet Jung would argue that it is necessary for collective evolution. The psyche of humanity is out of balance, over-identifying with the masculine principle. The rise of feminine archetypal power restores equilibrium. Women in their powerful phase are not only transforming themselves, but also reshaping the collective unconscious. The journey into the goddess archetype often involves rituals, whether formal or informal. Women may find themselves drawn to meditation, dance, art, or nature as ways of embodying archetypal energy. These practices ground the numinous power of the archetype in lived experience. Jung encouraged such creative engagement, for it allows unconscious material to be expressed consciously. Rituals, whether ancient or newly invented, create containers for archetypal energy, preventing it from overwhelming the ego. A woman who paints her visions, writes her dreams, or dances her emotions is not only healing herself but also honoring the archetypal forces moving through her. These expressions become bridges between the unconscious and the conscious, between the personal and the collective. Ultimately, the goddess archetype represents wholeness. She is not just one role or one energy, but the totality of feminine expression. For women entering their most powerful phase, awakening, this archetype is a call to live fully, to embody all aspects of themselves, and to serve as conduits for transformation. The universe sends them signs, synchronicities, and challenges to guide this process. Jung's psychology provides the framework to understand it. The archetype rises from the unconscious, demands integration, and reshapes life in profound ways. The woman who answers this call discovers that her power is not borrowed from external validation but rooted in the deepest structures of the psyche. She becomes both herself and, more than herself, an individual, embodying the timeless archetype of the goddess. Part 4. The signs the universe sends when you are entering this phase. Carl Jung insisted that the unconscious does not remain silent when profound transformation is approaching. It speaks in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in sudden impulses, and above all in synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that link inner states with outer events. For women entering their most powerful phase, these signs multiply, creating a pattern that feels impossible to ignore. The universe seems to orchestrate circumstances in such a way that the woman cannot deny that she is being guided toward a threshold. The signs can be subtle or dramatic, but together they mark the moment when she is called to embody a deeper level of strength, wisdom, and authenticity. One of the clearest signs comes through the dream life. Dreams intensify during periods of transition, reflecting the unconscious pressure for change. A woman on the verge of empowerment often dreams of thresholds, doors opening, bridges to be crossed, staircases ascending, or rivers to be forded. These images symbolize psychological crossing points, indicating that the ego is moving toward a new stage. Other dreams may feature archetypal feminine figures, queens, priestesses, goddesses who appear as guides or challengers. Jung understood these figures as personifications of the self, the archetype of wholeness summoning the dreamer to embrace her power. Sometimes the dreams are terrifying, filled with pursuit, destruction, or death. Yet death in dreams often signifies the end of an outdated identity and the birth of a new one. For a woman stepping into her most powerful phase, such dreams are unmistakable signals that the unconscious is demanding transformation. Another sign is the repetition of symbols in waking life. Jung stressed that archetypes communicate through symbols, and when the unconscious wants to send a message, symbols appear everywhere. A woman may begin to notice recurring numbers like 1111 or 333 on clocks, receipts, or addresses. She may encounter animals repeatedly, a hawk flying overhead, a black cat crossing her path, or butterflies appearing wherever she goes. Each animal carries archetypal, meaning the hawk symbolizes vision, the cat independence, and mystery, the butterfly transformation. These encounters, while easily dismissed as coincidence, often feel charged with significance. Jung would argue that the feeling of significance is the hallmark of synchronicity, the psyche's recognition that outer and inner worlds are aligned. Relationships also shift dramatically as signs of transformation. Many women entering their most powerful phase report sudden distance from friends or family members who once defined their world. They may feel misunderstood, criticized, or even attacked by those who resist their growth. Jung would interpret this as the psyche's way of clearing space. The individuation process requires shedding old roles and attachments that no longer serve. The universe often facilitates this by orchestrating conflicts or separations that free the woman to pursue her path. While painful, these ruptures are signs that new connections are on the horizon, relationships based not on conformity but on authenticity. At the same time, synchronicities may bring unexpected allies into her life. She might meet someone who shares her vision, encourages her creativity, or validates her inner knowing. These encounters feel fated, as if arranged by an intelligence greater than chance. Physical symptoms can also serve as signs. Women may experience sudden surges of energy, restlessness, or inexplicable fatigue. Jung saw the psyche and the body as inseparably linked. When the unconscious presses for change, the body often carries the message. Restlessness may signify psychic energy seeking new outlets, while fatigue may indicate the need to withdraw from old patterns. Some women describe sensations of heat, tingling, or heaviness, as if their bodies are recalibrating to hold more power. These experiences, though unsettling, are not random. They are the psyche's way of preparing the physical vessel for psychological expansion. Synchronicities often cluster around decisions. A woman may be considering a career change, a move, or an ending, and suddenly the universe bombards her with messages pointing in the same direction. She may overhear strangers discussing the very choice she is weighing, stumble across a book that addresses her dilemma, or receive a call from someone who embodies the life she longs for. Jung believed that synchronicities occur when inner readiness meets outer opportunity. The signs confirm what the unconscious already knows, that the time for change has come. For women entering their most powerful phase, these synchronicities act as guideposts, illuminating the path ahead. Another profound sign is the experience of time feeling altered. Women often report that time seems to speed up or slow down, that days blur or stretch, that events unfold with uncanny timing. Jung suggested that synchronicity challenges the linear notion of time, revealing a deeper order in which psyche and cosmos are intertwined. When a woman feels that everything is happening right on time, even amidst chaos, it is a sign that she is aligned with her deeper purpose. The universe appears to conspire in her favor, arranging events with perfect precision. This sensation of flow is a hallmark of entering the most powerful phase, for it reflects a shift from ego-driven control to alignment with the self. Isolation is another common sign. Before stepping into their power, many women experience a period of solitude or alienation. Friends drift away, familiar comforts lose their appeal, and they may feel invisible or misunderstood. Though painful, this isolation serves a purpose. It creates the space for inner listening. Jung emphasized that individuation requires turning inward, detaching from collective norms, to hear the voice of the unconscious. The universe often enforces this solitude so that the woman can discover her authentic self without distraction. What feels like abandonment is in fact preparation, a gestation period before rebirth into a new phase of empowerment. Financial or material disruptions can also be signs. Jobs may end, resources may dwindle, or unexpected expenses may arise. On the surface, these appear as setbacks, but Jung would interpret them symbolically. The psyche often dismantles external security to force inner reliance. When a woman no longer depends on external validation or material certainty, she accesses a deeper reservoir of inner strength. The universe, by shaking the foundations, compels her to build on a more authentic base. Many women later look back on financial struggles as turning points that freed them from dependency and redirected them toward purpose-driven paths. Creative impulses surge as another unmistakable sign. A woman may suddenly feel compelled to write, paint, dance, or design, even if she has never pursued such activities before. Jung saw creativity as the natural expression of psychic energy seeking integration. When the unconscious rises, it demands expression, and creativity becomes the outlet. These impulses should not be dismissed as hobbies, but honored as messages from the deeper self. They are signs that the psyche is overflowing with new life, urging her to manifest her inner world outwardly. Another pattern involves repeated confrontation with themes of death and rebirth. Women may find themselves drawn to stories, films, or conversations about transformation cycles or mortality. They may lose interest in trivial matters and feel preoccupied with deeper questions of meaning. Jung described this as the activation of the self, which always carries a spiritual dimension. The woman senses that something in her is dying, the old identity, the false roles, the borrowed scripts, and something new is being born. The universe amplifies this awareness by surrounding her with reminders of cycles, endings, and renewals. Interpersonal conflict often intensifies as a sign. Arguments erupt more easily, old grievances resurface, or misunderstandings multiply. While exhausting, these conflicts are signals that the psyche is no longer willing to repress truth. Jung noted that what is not made conscious appears as fate. Unresolved issues return until they are confronted. For women entering their powerful phase, conflict is the universe's way of clearing illusions. By forcing honesty, even through painful fights, the psyche ensures that only authentic connections remain. The woman who endures this fire emerges freer, lighter, and more aligned with her truth. Visions or moments of heightened perception are also common. Women may have sudden flashes of clarity, vivid daydreams, or mystical experiences that defy rational explanation. Jung would interpret these as eruptions of the unconscious moments when the veil between ego and self thins. They may occur during meditation in nature or even in ordinary tasks, but they leave a lasting impression. These glimpses reveal the vastness of the psyche, and affirm that transformation is underway. The woman feels both humbled and empowered, aware that she is part of a larger order. Perhaps the most consistent sign is the inner voice that refuses to be silenced. Women describe a persistent intuition, a knowing that insists on being heard. It may say, "Leave now, speak up, or create this." The voice is not loud but steady, and ignoring it brings increasing discomfort. Jung identified this voice as the self guiding the ego. It is not the chatter of the mind, but the deeper wisdom of the unconscious. When a woman learns to trust this voice, she aligns with her destiny. The universe reinforces her trust by confirming her choices through synchronicities and outcomes. All these signs, dreams, symbols, synchronicities, disruptions, isolation, creativity, conflict, visions, and intuition work together to announce the transition. The universe does not send them randomly. It sends them because the woman is ready. Jung emphasized that the psyche knows what the ego does not. The signs are the psyche's way of guiding consciousness into alignment with the self. For women entering their most powerful phase, these signs are invitations to step into their full archetypal embodiment. The challenge is to recognize them not as accidents, but as messages, to interpret them with symbolic awareness and to respond with courage. Part 5. The power of new consciousness when a woman awakens. Carl Jung believed that awakening is not a singular event, but a profound shift in consciousness that transforms the entire orientation of a person's life. For women entering their most powerful phase, this awakening manifests as a radical reorganization of perception, values, and identity. What once seemed unquestionable social roles, relationships, ambitions, and definitions of success suddenly loses its grip. Instead, a new clarity emerges, one that is rooted not in the ego but in the self, the archetype of totality within the psyche. This shift does not merely add new insights, it restructures the very foundation of awareness. A woman in this stage begins to see the world, others, and herself through new eyes, and that vision becomes the source of her power. One of the first signs of new consciousness is the collapse of false identities. Women often realize that much of their life has been lived in response to external expectations, family culture, religion, partners, or workplaces. They see how their personalities were shaped to please, to conform, or to survive. This recognition can be painful, as it reveals years or decades of self-betrayal. Yet it is also liberating. Jung described this as the moment when the ego relinquishes its rigid defenses and allows deeper truths to surface. The woman no longer defines herself by labels or roles, but by an inner authenticity that resists categorization. She feels less need to explain herself, less compulsion to perform, and more freedom simply to be. This newfound authenticity is not arrogance but alignment with the self. With new consciousness comes a profound shift in perception. Ordinary life begins to appear symbolic. A conversation with a stranger feels like a message. A piece of music evokes a revelation. A walk in nature becomes a dialogue with the soul of the world. Jung called this symbolic consciousness the ability to see beyond literal appearances into the archetypal dimension of reality. Women in awakening often describe feeling as if the world is alive, filled with meaning and intelligence. They are no longer passive observers, but participants in a cosmic dialogue. This perception radically alters how they approach decisions, relationships, and creativity. Instead of forcing outcomes, they attune to synchronicities, trusting the larger order that speaks through symbols. This shift also awakens intuition to an extraordinary degree. Jung considered intuition one of the primary functions of consciousness, but in most people it is overshadowed by rationality or sensory data. In awakening, intuition rises to the forefront. A woman suddenly knows when a relationship is toxic, even if appearances suggest otherwise. She senses opportunities before they arrive, feels danger before it materializes, and perceives patterns invisible to others. This is not superstition, but the psyche's expanded access to unconscious material. Jung described intuition as perception via the unconscious. It is the psyche's way of grasping wholes without dissecting parts. For women, trusting this intuitive clarity is a cornerstone of their power, for it allows them to navigate complexity with confidence and precision. New consciousness also transforms emotional life. Whereas before emotions may have felt overwhelming, chaotic, or suppressed, now they become teachers. Anger reveals boundaries, sadness reveals depth, joy reveals alignment, and fear reveals growth edges. Instead of resisting emotions, women begin to integrate them as part of their wholeness. Jung argued that individuation requires the reconciliation of opposites, and this includes integrating rationality with emotion. Women in awakening embody this integration. They do not apologize for feeling deeply, nor do they let feelings dominate blindly. They listen to emotions as messages, honor them, and allow them to guide choices. This balanced relationship with emotion creates resilience and authenticity. A striking feature of awakening is the dissolution of fear around solitude. Many women previously feared being alone, equating it with abandonment or inadequacy. In new consciousness, solitude becomes sacred. It is in solitude that the unconscious speaks most clearly, that creativity flourishes, and that connection to the self deepens. Jung himself valued solitude as essential for individuation, for it frees the individual from collective pressure. Women in awakening discover that solitude is not emptiness, but fullness, a space brimming with insight and vitality. They no longer fear their own company, but cherish it, knowing that from it arises their truest power. The awakening also restructures relationships. Old patterns of dependency, people-pleasing, or toxic dynamics no longer resonate. Women begin to attract or choose connections that honor authenticity. They refuse to tolerate manipulation, dishonesty, or superficiality. This can lead to painful endings, but it also creates space for soul-level bonds. Jung described individuation as a process that benefits not only the individual, but also relationships. For authentic people create authentic connections. Women in awakening embody this principle. Their friendships, partnerships, and family roles transform as they insist on honesty, respect, and mutual growth. The power of their new consciousness radiates into every interaction, reshaping their relational world. Another hallmark of awakening is the flowering of creativity. Jung insisted that creativity is a natural outcome of psychic integration, for the unconscious seeks expression. Women entering their most powerful phase often experience surges of creative energy, writing, painting, dancing, innovating, or leading in ways that feel divinely inspired. This creativity is not merely personal, but archetypal. It carries a numinous quality that touches others, as if the woman has become a channel for something larger than herself. The arts, entrepreneurship, activism, or teaching, whatever form it takes, become vehicles for the expression of archetypal feminine energy. This is why women in awakening often feel compelled to create. The self-demands manifestation, and creativity becomes the bridge between the inner and outer worlds. Spiritual awareness intensifies as well. Jung did not equate awakening with adherence to a specific religion, but with a direct experience of the numinous, the sense of contact with something greater than the ego. Women in awakening often feel this presence in nature, in silence, in dreams, or in moments of synchronicity. They may experience awe, reverence, or even mystical union. This spiritual dimension grounds their power in humility, for they recognize that their strength is not theirs alone, but flows from the deeper structures of the psyche and cosmos. They feel guided, supported, and part of a larger order. This sense of spiritual alignment gives them courage to take risks, to speak truth, and to follow their path, even when it defies convention. Awakening also alters the relationship with time. Women describe feeling less bound by urgency, less obsessed with linear progress, and more attuned to cycles. They honor natural rhythms, daily, monthly, seasonal, and life stages as mirrors of their own inner processes. Jung emphasized that the psyche unfolds in symbolic time rather than mechanical time. Women in awakening embody this wisdom by allowing processes to ripen instead of forcing outcomes. They learn patience, trusting that each phase, birth, growth, death, and renewal, has its purpose. This cyclical awareness grants them peace in uncertainty and resilience in change. One of the most empowering aspects of new consciousness is the dissolution of external validation. In earlier phases, many women measure worth by approval, recognition, or success as defined by others. Awakening shatters this dependency. Women realize that their value is intrinsic, not contingent. They no longer seek permission to be themselves or to pursue their desires. This autonomy is the essence of power. Jung argued that individuation requires separation from the collective, a refusal to be defined by mass opinion. Women in awakening embody this separation with grace. They respect others but do not conform to please. Their lives become guided by inner authority, and this shift is both liberating and magnetic. The awakening also deepens empathy and compassion. Having confronted their own shadows and illusions, women become less judgmental of others. They see the struggles, wounds, and unconscious patterns that drive human behavior. This empathy is not weakness but strength, for it allows them to connect authentically while maintaining boundaries. Jung suggested that individuation enhances one's capacity to serve the collective, for wholeness in the individual radiates healing outward. Women in awakening embody this by becoming mentors, guides, or sources of inspiration. Their compassion is not sentimental but rooted in wisdom. They know suffering firsthand and thus honor it in others without enabling dysfunction. Another dimension of awakening is the reclamation of the body. Many women carry wounds of shame, objectification, or disconnection from their physical selves. Awakening brings a new relationship with the body as sacred. Women begin to listen to bodily wisdom, honoring cycles, sensations, and desires. Movement, breath, and embodiment become integral to their consciousness. This shift is revolutionary in cultures that commodify or devalue the female body. Jung believed that the psyche expresses itself through the soma, and women in awakening experience this directly. They feel their bodies not as burdens but as vessels of power, pleasure, and intuition. The emergence of new consciousness also shifts the woman's sense of purpose. She no longer chases goals imposed from outside, but follows a vocation that arises from within. Jung defined vocation as a call of destiny, a summons from the self. Women in awakening often feel this as a deep knowing, "This is what I am here to do." Whether in art, leadership, healing, teaching, or innovation, their purpose transcends personal ambition. It feels archetypal, connected to collective transformation. This sense of destiny fuels their resilience, for setbacks no longer deter them. They understand that their path is not optional but essential, and the universe aligns to support it. An essential part of awakening is also the acceptance of paradox. Women realize that life is not about resolving all contradictions but holding them. They embrace being strong and vulnerable, independent and connected, rational and emotional, fierce and gentle. This capacity to hold opposites without collapse is a mark of psychological maturity. Jung emphasized that individuation culminates in the integration of opposites, and women in awakening embody this integration. Their power lies not in one-dimensional strength but in multifaceted wholeness. They live beyond stereotypes, embodying the full spectrum of human possibility. Awakening inevitably provokes resistance from the external world. Others may project fear, envy, or hostility onto the awakened woman, sensing her shift but not understanding it. Relationships may end, workplaces may become hostile, and family members may react with confusion. Jung would interpret this resistance as the collective's discomfort with individuation, for authentic individuals challenge conformity. Women in awakening must therefore develop resilience to projection, learning to discern what belongs to them and what belongs to others. They protect their energy, set boundaries, and remain aligned with their truth, despite opposition. This resilience becomes another expression of their power. Finally, the power of new consciousness reveals itself in presence. Women in awakening need not strive to impress or dominate. Their very being radiates depth, authenticity, and authority. People feel their energy before they speak. Their words carry weight, their silence carries impact, and their actions resonate beyond themselves. Jung described the individuated person as one who embodies the self, and women, in awakening, embody this principle. They become living symbols of transformation, not because they are flawless, but because they are whole. Their presence itself becomes a sign that awakening is real, that power rooted in consciousness is not only possible but transformative for the world. Part 6. Becoming a Guide: The Mission of Women in Their Most Powerful Phase. Carl Jung believed that individuation is not a private achievement, but a contribution to the collective. The woman who integrates her shadow, awakens her archetypal energies, and embodies new consciousness does not exist in isolation. Her transformation radiates outward, influencing family, community, culture, and even the collective unconscious of humanity. In Jungian psychology, the individuated person becomes a living symbol, a guide whose very presence awakens possibilities in others. For women entering their most powerful phase, this is their mission: not to dominate or impose, but to serve as living embodiments of authenticity, wholeness, and archetypal feminine wisdom. The mission of the awakened woman begins with guidance through presence. She does not need to preach, convince, or persuade. Her very being carries authority. Jung wrote that when the self emerges, it transforms the personality into a vessel of numinous energy. People sense this presence, even if they cannot name it. They feel safer, clearer, or more inspired in her company. Some may project admiration or devotion onto her, while others may feel threatened and resist her influence. But the impact is undeniable. Her individuation has shifted the collective field. In this way, the mission of the powerful woman is not chosen but given. It arises naturally from the radiance of her consciousness. One aspect of this mission is mentorship. Women who have walked the path of shadow integration and awakening often feel called to guide others. They see in younger women or peers the struggles they once endured: confusion, repression, self-betrayal, and they offer support, wisdom, and encouragement. This mentorship need not be formal. It may occur in conversations, friendships, or creative works. Jung emphasized that individuation enhances empathy for those who have confronted their own darkness, can honor the struggles of others without judgment. The awakened woman becomes a guide not by authority but by compassion. She does not rescue or control, but mirrors back the truth, empowering others to find their own path. The archetype of the guide often appears in dreams during this phase. A woman may dream of leading others through forests, mountains, or labyrinths. She may appear in her own dreams as a teacher, healer, or warrior. These images reflect the psyche's recognition of her role. Just as she once needed archetypal guidance from within, now she embodies that guidance for others. Jung saw this as the cycle of individuation. Those who integrate their unconscious contents become carriers of archetypal energy, shaping the collective. The awakened woman thus becomes a channel for archetypes like the wise woman, the healer, the protector, or the mother of all. The mission of women in their powerful phase also involves protecting the sacred. Across cultures, the feminine has been associated with the defense of life, fertility, and community. In Jungian terms, this protective impulse is archetypal. Women, embodying the archetype of the goddess, often feel compelled to defend justice, nurture the vulnerable, or preserve what is sacred. This may take the form of activism, leadership, or simply living with integrity in a corrupt environment. The awakened woman recognizes that her power is not for personal gain alone, but for the safeguarding of life itself. Her mission is to ensure that future generations inherit a world where authenticity, creativity, and balance can thrive. Creativity itself becomes part of her mission. Having reclaimed the energy of the unconscious, women in this phase often become prolific creators. They write, paint, build, teach, or innovate in ways that inspire others. Jung noted that creative works carry archetypal resonance. They touch the collective because they emerge from the deeper psyche. The awakened woman's creations are not merely personal expressions but contributions to the collective unconscious. They awaken others, stir emotions, and plant seeds of transformation. Her art, ideas, or leadership become guides for those still searching for their path. Another dimension of her mission is healing. Having confronted her own wounds, the powerful woman often feels called to help others heal. This may occur through therapy, coaching, art, or simply presence. Jung emphasized that one cannot guide others through territory one has not traveled. The woman who has embraced her shadow, endured loneliness, and emerged into authenticity carries an authority that books or theories cannot provide. Her wounds, once sources of shame, become sources of wisdom. By sharing her story or holding space for others, she normalizes struggle and models resilience. In this way, her personal healing becomes collective healing. The mission also involves challenging structures of oppression. Awakening makes women acutely aware of cultural conditioning, patriarchal systems, and social injustices that suppress authenticity. They no longer tolerate silence or compliance. Jung saw individuation as inherently subversive, for it requires breaking from collective norms. The powerful woman embodies this subversion with grace. She challenges stereotypes, refuses to shrink, and insists on truth. This may provoke resistance, but it also inspires change. Her mission is not rebellion for its own sake, but transformation, dismantling what no longer serves humanity and building structures that honor wholeness. Leadership emerges naturally from this mission. The awakened woman does not seek power in the conventional sense but is entrusted with it because of her integrity. Others sense her clarity and follow her example. Jung described the individuated person as a center of gravity in the psyche, and women in their most powerful phase embody this gravitational pull in the collective. They lead not by domination but by resonance. Their leadership is archetypal, aligning with figures like Demeter, Isis, or Sophia, the mother, the healer, the wise guide. This archetypal leadership transcends titles or positions. It radiates in every sphere of life, from families to organizations to communities. Spiritual service is another mission. Women in their powerful phase often feel called to connect others with the sacred. This does not mean preaching religion, but embodying a sense of reverence for life, mystery, and meaning. Jung believed that the psyche has a religious function, a drive toward the numinous. The awakened woman carries this numinous quality. Her presence awakens awe, her words evoke depth, and her actions reflect alignment with something greater than herself. She becomes a guide not only psychologically but spiritually, helping others reconnect with the archetype of the self. This mission transcends dogma and speaks directly to the soul. A critical part of her mission is modeling boundaries. Women in awakening demonstrate that saying no is as sacred as saying yes. They show that power does not come from endless giving or self-sacrifice, but from conscious choice. This modeling liberates others, especially women conditioned to please or comply. Jung argued that individuation requires separation from the collective, and boundaries are the means of that separation. By living with clear boundaries, the awakened woman teaches others to honor themselves, protect their energy, and align with truth. Her mission is not to carry everyone, but to empower each person to carry themselves. The mission of the powerful woman also involves holding paradoxes for the collective. Many people cannot tolerate ambiguity. They cling to black and white thinking. The awakened woman, having integrated opposites within herself, models a different way. She shows that one can be strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, nurturing and fierce. This capacity to hold paradox becomes her gift to the world. Jung believed that wholeness is found not in eliminating contradictions but in embracing them. The awakened woman embodies this wholeness, guiding others out of rigid dualities into the richness of complexity. Her mission extends into the collective unconscious through culture. Women in their most powerful phase often influence art, literature, film, politics, or social movements. Their presence activates archetypal themes that ripple across society. Jung emphasized that cultural change arises from individual transformation multiplied. The awakened woman is a seed of cultural evolution. By embodying authenticity, she challenges stereotypes of femininity, reshapes narratives of power, and restores balance between masculine and feminine energies. Her mission is not merely personal but civilizational. An essential element of this mission is humility. Women who embody archetypal power recognize that it flows through them, not from them. Jung warned that identification with archetypes can lead to inflation, the ego mistaking itself for the self. The awakened woman avoids this trap by remaining grounded. She knows she is a channel, not the source. Her humility safeguards her mission, allowing her to serve without exploitation. This humility also deepens her authority for others, sense that her power is authentic, not ego-driven. She becomes trustworthy, a true guide. The mission of women in their powerful phase also includes generativity, investing in the future. Jung saw individuation as a bridge between past and future, integrating ancestral patterns while opening new possibilities. Awakened women often feel called to break generational cycles of trauma, silence, or repression. They heal not only for themselves, but for their descendants. They model new ways of living, parenting, partnering, and creating. Their mission is to ensure that those who come after inherit a world less burdened by shadow and more open to wholeness. This generativity is perhaps the most enduring aspect of their legacy. In daily life, this mission may appear simple, honest conversations, acts of kindness, courageous choices, but beneath these actions lies archetypal significance. Jung taught that the smallest acts aligned with the self resonate far beyond their immediate context. A woman who speaks truth in a meeting may inspire silent colleagues. A mother who sets boundaries may transform her children's understanding of respect. An artist who creates authentically may awaken thousands she will never meet. The awakened woman understands this ripple effect and lives accordingly. Her mission is not measured in fame or numbers, but in authenticity. Ultimately, the mission of women in their most powerful phase is to guide humanity toward integration. Jung believed that the imbalance of modern culture, the overemphasis on rationality, materialism, and masculine principles, could only be healed by the resurgence of the feminine. The awakened woman is the embodiment of this resurgence. She does not fight against the masculine, but restores balance by embodying intuition, receptivity, creativity, and connection. Her mission is to hold the archetypal feminine in the world, reminding humanity of what it has forgotten. By living authentically, she becomes a guide not only for individuals, but for the collective soul. You are not chosen by chance. Every sign, every synchronicity, every storm you've survived has been preparing you for this moment. Now you carry the mission of becoming not just yourself, but a guide for others. If this spoke to you, share your story in the comments. Let other women know they are not alone. Like this video, subscribe, and join our community of awakening souls. Your power is the universe's gift. Don't waste it.